Muff, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. You'll never guess where I was going.
Go on, see
I
Steve.
was going to my brother Steve's house because they're all his band are routining up there today because they're just starting a big tour.
No way.
And so he has a couple of guys who come in from Brazil.
Yeah.
And they all meet up in Cheltenham. And they rehearse for 2 days, and then off they go. So I always go down and join in. That's where I was going.
Do you know, it's really, and I won't keep you too long. I really appreciate you talking to us this afternoon, Muff. But I was watching that. Do you know the BBC documentary? And it wasn't because I knew we were going to be doing this today, but I'd had it on me list of things to watch for ages. The documentary they did about Steve and you were in it as well, talking about back in the day, the BBC documentary.
Yeah.
And I just thought, you know, when you start to realise what a contribution he made, and you made, and all the others made to Birmingham music as well. So it's great we could have you with us on a day that we're celebrating this today. Do you still play? Are you still doing it or not?
No. Well, when I left the Spencer Davies group in about 1969, I went straight to Island Records.
Right.
And so I became involved in the record industry all my life, signing acts and working acts and producing and stuff. And so I stopped playing, you know, and because I was so busy doing other things.
Did you miss that?
No,
not at all.
Missed playing.
I mean, you were. I was just reading some of the people that you worked with. I mean, you produced Dire Straits' a self-titled album, didn't you? That was in '78.
Yeah.
What was that? One of your first producing jobs?
No, I think that I only produced a little bit because I was basically working as an A&R man, signing stuff for Ireland. But I signed the Sparks to Ireland.
Wow!
And I tried. I couldn't find anybody to produce them. I ended up producing them myself, and we made a great record called "This Town Ain't Big Enough for the Both of Us."
Yeah.
And that was one of the first things that I ever did in the studio with another act, so to speak. And
what were Russ and Ron like to work with? Were they, because they had this sort of image, didn't they, that they portrayed? But I'm guessing they weren't anything like the image. Were they?
No, they're very professional, and that's why they're still going now. Of course,
yeah.
You know? Yeah, a lot of these guys, you know, they are underneath it all. They are very professional, and you know, they know what they need to do.
When you look at some of the other names from the eight, I'm thinking of people like Terence Trent D'Arby, who you signed to Ireland, and Sade, the Psychedelic Furs. I mean, where were you? You were out in clubs and pubs, and you were just checking out these guys all the while, were you?
Yeah.
And what was it that gave you that spark, Muff? What was it that made you think, yes, we'll have them?
It's very difficult. It's a combination of many things. The quality of the songs that they're singing, if you're seeing them live, the way the audience reacts does help. The way they look and present themselves and everything else. Also, whether they have good management, you know, and stuff around them that looks well together. All of those things contribute, as well as just, you know, like you do on the X Factor or something. Do they have a good voice or don't they? And do they look pretty or don't they? You know, I mean, there's yes, those things are part of it, but there's a whole spectre of stuff around it that you need to take into account. And if all those things fall into place, then you can gamble that there's a jolly good chance that they're going to make it.
The one thing you didn't mention there, and the one thing I think is missing personally in the X Factor is the writing. What's their material like? It's like you mentioned Sparks, you know, and you talk about people like Sade. They had great material. They weren't doing. It's all covers now, Muff, isn't it?
It is, isn't it? Well, not necessarily all covers, but with those X Factor winners, songwriters write the songs for them, you know. But I always looked for artists that self-composed.
Right.
Yeah, that was always the thing that I tried to do in the main, you know, because to me that was the greatest enjoyment and the creativity of the whole of the music scene, and that's gone away a little bit recently. But these things tend to come in you know, lumps, and it'll come along again.
It's there's always, to me, I mean, maybe I'm getting old and cynical, but there's always an obstacle. Punk kind of shook things up and stopped things for a while, and that was a kind of roadblock for a lot of bands. It stopped a lot of careers, didn't it? Of course.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I was very much involved with the Clash, and got terrible stick from them every time I went down into the studios. They used to try to lock the door to keep me out because I was always complaining how crap it sounded. And they used to call me Duff Windbag. But, you know, sometimes those are the kind of fights you used to have to have.
Yeah.
But they were wonderful guys. And again, fantastic live, you know, tremendous energy, you know, and all those things that, you know, you can see in the artists that make it big. All that stuff comes together.
I was trying to explain to somebody the other day the difference between a good producer and a not so great producer, because I was telling them about Squeeze when they were being produced by Elvis Costello, and the difference that he made to some of their songs just by going in with and saying, "Hey guys, actually, have you thought about doing it in this and change the tempo, and maybe the drummer does this differently and all that." As a producer, you walk a fine line, don't you, between being constructive with your help and getting in the way, I suppose, and then the band resenting you. How do you get around that, Muff?
Well, you do exactly what you've just mentioned that Elvis Costello did. Those are exactly the kind of thing that producers do. They also offer the artist certain sounds that can be made within the studio. But of course, all that's fine as long as the artist says, "Okay, I will try it this way, and I will, you know, try the drums this way." Of course, you often get a situation where you suggest these things to an artist, and they say, "No way, this is the way I've always done it, and I ain't changing it for anybody."
And what do you do in that situation?
That's when you need you know, a decent personality and a man management skill and everything else, and eventually you work your way around it. Often what you do is say, "Okay, well let's do something. You do it exactly the way you want to do it, and then after we've done that, we'll do it the way I suggested we'll do it, and then you can then decide which one is the best," you know, or something like that. You know, you've just got to encourage and encourage and encourage all the time. Often artists are right. You know, there's been many times I've asked artists to change things and they flatly refuse, and I've got them to change it, and it was better the way they said. And then you've got to be strong enough to say, "I was wrong and you were right."
I was watching something the other day about Nirvana and Butch Vig was their producer, wasn't he? And he was saying that he actually conned them a little bit and said, "Oh, the tape wasn't recording properly. Do that again." But he wanted him to do it many times so that he could sort of overtrack it. And he's got, "No, do that again. Oh, no, that wasn't quite. Oh, the microphone didn't pick you." Have you ever done that? Have you?
I think a lot of people do those kind of tricks.
Do they?
But of course, all of this kind of stuff has changed now because people record themselves at home. You know, and then what you have to do is really the only thing that you can do is either get them to, if it's not good enough, completely re-record it again and give them hints on how to do that, or even sometimes the song needs restructuring. But then, of course, the editing facilities now on all the digital recording, you can take a chorus out and shift a verse in and stick an intro on the front and all kinds of stuff.
Do you do all that? Did you embrace that? Because you would have been, growing up in the analog world, wouldn't you? So did you embrace digital, Muff, or did you?
No, I didn't. I mean, it was all coming in when I was obviously still very much involved, but I stopped producing in about the early 90s because I was so busy as I became head of A&R for Sony, and I had dozens and dozens of acts to look after and to oversee. And so I was completely involved in that. So I stopped working in the studio.
Well, listen, I know I'm taking up your time. Before I let you go, and I know you're off to Steve's.
I got one thing you can help me with.
Go on.
The middle of next year, the Spencer Davis Group's Keep On Running is 50 years old.
You're joking.
Right?
Yeah.
Now, we reckon, but we're not sure, and this is where I'd like some help, we reckon we are the only group that are all still alive, right, that had a number one, and we were the only four people on it. There were no extras, there were no backing singers, there were no session musicians or anybody else.
Yeah.
There was just four of us, and we went in the studio 50 years ago and recorded Keep On Running. And it went to number one.
Yeah.
Right? So we reckon we're the only group that are still all together and still all alive, rather, that had a number one. And we don't think there's anybody. I mean, if you go through the Beatles and the Stones and the Who and we're not sure, and the Kinks, we're not sure that there's anybody else that has that had a number one, and they're all still alive 50 years later.
Are you going to celebrate that? Are you going to do anything with that?
We haven't decided yet.
Oh,
we might do something.
You've got to play it again, Muff. You've got to all get together, haven't you, and just give it a... Oh, you've got to.
Well, we thought maybe we'd just get together and recreate some of our publicity photographs from 1966, standing the way we are now.
Exactly, in the same
less
location.
hair and bigger bellies.